The Florida legislature just passed some sweeping, some say controversial legislation. Whether or not the bills become law is of course up to Governor Rick Scott. We caught up with him and asked him his intentions. The Florida legislature just passed a bill aimed at cutting down on voter fraud. It would shorten the number of days for early voting, tighten rules for registration drives, and limit when voters can submit address changes. Will you sign that into law, Governor?
Well, they passed something like 300 bills. I'm going to review all these bills. The things I do care about is I don't want any voter fraud, and I want people to get out to vote. I tell people in my speeches, get out to vote and stay active. I tell them, one thing about this session, thousands of people show up in Tallahassee all the time. So make sure you make your voice heard all along, but vote. Because my focus has been this whole session is on jobs and getting our economy going again and fulfilling my campaign plan of 7 steps to 700,000 jobs.
You are a Republican. The legislature is dominated by Republicans. Apparently they thought there was some issue to voter fraud, and that's why they passed it. Right. Does this sound like something you might sign? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go through it. I care. I have a great Secretary of State, Kurt Browning. It's something we've talked about. We want to make sure that there's no voter fraud, and we want to make sure people get out and vote.
Senator Bill Nelson says if this becomes law, he wants the Justice Department to investigate it. What do you say to that?
Well, look, this is our state. We're going to make sure that we do the right things in this state. We're committed to making sure there's no voter fraud. We're committed to making sure we try to get people to get out to vote.
All right, Florida's about to require those applying for welfare benefits to take a drug test, and the applicant must initially pay for the cost of that test. You call this one of your legislative priorities.
Absolutely.
Why?
Let's think about it. If you're a taxpayer and you're paying for somebody's welfare benefits, if you're paying taxes in our state, the odds are you probably had to take a drug test to get your job. So isn't it fair that somebody on welfare does the same thing? They take a drug test. And if they have a problem, the odds are there's a great chance that they'll go get treatment and deal with those issues. So it's absolutely fair to both our taxpayers, and it's fair to the recipient.
So-called pill mills. Florida is described as the nation's epicenter of pain pill epidemic. Now, why is the problem here apparently so much more severe than it is in other states?
Well, we have not had a law enforcement solution. So the first thing I did is I set up a strike force with the Attorney General. Both of us, Pam Bondi and I, both had a big focus on this. So we allocated dollars from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to help our local sheriffs and our local police chiefs that are being overwhelmed with this problem. We allocated investigative resources out of the state government. And then we focused on making sure we had legislation that really worked. And so the first thing is we said, if you're a physician and you prescribe a narcotic, you shouldn't be able to dispense it out of your office. That should have a big impact. Second, we said you can't own a pharmacy. Then we sat down with law enforcement and said, what other things do you need to make sure that we can have a law enforcement solution? Because think about this problem. We know the manufacturer, we know the distributor, and we know the doctors. So if we put our efforts into this and really monitor that and track that, we can have a dramatic impact.
Please describe the strike force that you've created to deal with this problem.
Sure. What we did is we organized it by region, working with sheriffs and police chiefs, and we took state dollars and state investigative resources, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Department of Health, and said, how can we help our sheriffs and police chiefs? It's been very successful. We've had a lot of arrests. So the strike force has had a big impact, and the legislation is going to have a big impact. We're going to stop this problem. We're no longer going to be known as the OxyContin Express.
Are you going after any doctors?
We'll go after anybody that is part of the chain of distributing illegally legal drugs. We have 7 or 8 people dying a day in our state of overdoses of these drugs. I have a good friend that his daughter, 18-year-old daughter, died this way a couple months ago. And it's something that almost every family in the state has dealt with in some way.
The legislature has passed the Healthcare Freedom Act. That's a proposed constitutional amendment that would allow Floridians to opt out of Obamacare if voters approve. You no doubt support that. Why is that important?
Well, look, the federal government shouldn't be telling us how we spend our money. That doesn't make any sense. We should have the freedom as individuals to decide how we spend our money, whether we want to buy health insurance or don't want to buy health insurance. It's not something the federal government, what else are they going to tell us to buy? So as you know, I put a lot of effort into making sure that the right thing happens in healthcare. The right thing is is that you ought to know what your options are. There should be more competition. You ought to be able to buy whatever insurance you want. You ought to be able to know what things cost. You ought to get the same tax breaks as employers do, so you buy your own policy. You ought to get a break if you take care of yourself. Those are things that ought to happen in healthcare, because the problem with healthcare is it costs too much, but it's the system costs too much, and so that's what we should attack. Not having some mandate that we all have to buy government-sponsored insurance.
Former Attorney General Bill McCollum, of course, led the charge on this. Is Florida still on the forefront of the fight against this?
Absolutely. Attorney General McCollum did a great job with that suit, and then Attorney General Bondi has kept it going, and we now have even more states. I think 6 more states just joined. A majority of the states in the country are part of our suit. It's a suit that I believe will win. It goes to the 11th Circuit. In June, there's oral hearings, I think, in June, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court, most likely. And hopefully the right thing will happen. I'm very optimistic.
The costs of Medicaid comprise 30% of Florida's budget, and when Obamacare kicks in fully in 2014, it could add up to 1.7 million more people to the Medicaid rolls. Legislature just passed Medicaid reform, cutting funding for 2 Medicaid programs. Now, were those cuts adequate, or would you like to see them go deeper?
Well, let's think about what we should do. The long-term solution is this: the federal government should give us a block grant. We know what we want to do in Florida. We know who we need to take care of. We know we can do it better. We don't need the strings attached that the federal government always attaches to every program they have. So that's the best thing that could happen. Obamacare is going to be the biggest job killer in our state. It's going to cause us unbelievable tax increases because we won't be able to afford all the additional mandates. Employers are right now deciding whether they want to hire or not hire based on the cost of Obamacare. So we need to make sure that we defend our rights as an individual state to decide what we want to do with health care. And the best thing the federal government can do is just give us a block grant, no different than how they dealt with welfare reform back in the mid-1990s.
So you're satisfied with the cuts the legislature approved?
What we did right was we're moving the Medicaid program to a much better program where the recipient of Medicaid is going to be able to decide what type of care they want, who they want to be taken care of. They're going to have a menu board of solutions. It'll reduce taxpayers' costs. It'll give them better care, better access, and they'll have more involvement.
What do you say to critics who claim the increased role of health management organizations, HMOs, could lead to some current Medicaid patients being abandoned?
Well, look, the private sector, we work with the HMOs, and the state will monitor those programs. They'll make sure that people have access to the right type of managed care product. We'll monitor to make sure they have the right doctors involved in their plans and things like that. So this is going to be very good for recipients of Medicaid. Medicaid, as you know, is a program for those that can't afford insurance.
The total budget passed by the legislature was $69.7 billion. Are you satisfied with that, or should it have been less?
Well, my goal when I ran is to make sure we drive down the cost of government, the size of government, and we put money back into taxpayers' hands, because I know those are the things that are going to get jobs going. Everything I'm doing as governor is focused on jobs, because we know that we can't afford our healthcare safety net, our law enforcement, our education, any of these things if we don't have a robust economy. So my focus is, and this budget does it, it reduces business tax. Almost half of the business owners that are paying taxes now won't be paying business taxes going forward. That's a real positive. More money in their hands means more jobs. On top of that, reduces property taxes by over $200 million. That also will help business owners and individuals who want to start businesses have more money in their pocket to build businesses, and it drives down the cost of government.
You're relatively new on the job. What do you envision 4 years from now? What would you like to see accomplished as governor?
My goal is I put a specific plan together, 7 steps to 700,000 jobs. What I want to make sure is we're the state that people say, this is the state where you want to open your business, expand your business, move your business to, because it's a state that is a model for the rest of the country. I want to be a model for having fair taxes, don't waste taxpayers' money, have regulation that's fair. We still want to take care of our environment, but don't have regulations that don't make sense, permitting processes that take too long. Agencies are a problem to deal with. I also want to make sure that we have a great education system. We want to have the best educated workforce, and we want to take care of our environment.
Florida Governor Rick Scott, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Good luck, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.